But overall, I agree with Sean. He creates content on YouTube under Actual Justice Warrior if you want to check out his content. But what he says there is totally true.
Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today I want to talk a little bit about Ana Kasparian, where exactly she's moved on the political spectrum, because I, as a TYT member, recently saw her 17th anniversary at TYT Ask Me Anything, and there was very interesting information there that I'm going to show you some small snippets of that I don't think you might have heard about in the public that might clarify some of her positions and some of her change, because contrary to what many people on the right and the left are actually reporting, Ana has not taken the red pill, become a conservative, put on the MAGA hat, or anything like that. But her positions have changed on very specific issues, and there's a good rational basis for those specific changes. Now, we're going to get into it, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who signed up over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And remind you that on Saturday, April 27th in Austin, Texas, I will be at Mindsfest. Link to tickets, top of the description, promo code AJW for 20% off. So look, a long time ago, when I saw Ana Kasparian get into this whole birthing person controversy with people on the left, and I saw people who were supposedly her friends attacking her on a personal level, taking things way too far, I put out the call on twitter.com/mytwitter.com for Ana to unblock me, and I said that if she did so, we would become literal best friends. And this has clearly 100% totally happened. It's not sarcasm at all. It's not like that clip where she's praising and agreeing with me is in the context of Tim taking a weirdly insane stance on divorce or anything.
But overall, I agree with Sean, the guest who was on Tim Pool's show, That was just a full endorsement without any caveats given of all my positions.
Therefore, Ana is now in the AJW camp. But the thing is, that actually might not be all that true. The thing is, Ana Kasparian has actually moved, according to my viewing of her channel, more left-wing on a lot of economic issues. Like, over time, she's become more socialist and whatnot, and she's changed on some very specific issues for very specific reasons. Now, everybody knows about her crime takes. Everybody understands that she's against a lot of these reforms that she previously supported, because in reality, the things that she voted for, the things that she was championing, did not churn out the way that she expected, and she's reacting to that new information in a sensible way by changing her positions. On top of that, she said repeatedly on her channel that she would vote to treat a certain category of offenders better, and then the state of California, after that would pass, would then revise a bunch of violent offenders into said category, and that is not what she paid for. That was a bait and switch kind of situation. So I think it is quite understandable, and people should have a little bit more humility when they talk about you get exactly what you vote for when things like that tend to occur.
Dismembering a corpse and hiding a corpse after dismembering it, not bail eligible. Not a serious crime. I'm not even kidding, guys. Like, when Joy Behar outlined that case, I was like, she's crazy. This isn't a thing. This isn't real. So I looked it up. It's real, guys. It's real. Listen, if being on the left means supporting this, then I'm not on the left, and I'm okay with that.
And how many times have you guys out there in the audience, my more right-wing audience, voted for a Republican only to later on call that person a rhino, a Republican in name only, when they started backing what you perceive to be left-wing policies? This happens all the time in American politics, but for whatever reason, whenever a left-wing person complains about something that they voted for, even though there's a clear and obvious bait and switch in how it was implemented, people say, ha, you gotta deal with it. Even though that's just not productive in any way and not even true in a lot of particular cases.
And the last 2 years have been super challenging because I've grown in certain ways that sometimes I'm worried, you know, the audience might not take well to, and to be sure, some audience members haven't taken well to it.
Now look, a lot of the change was inspired by the fact, and Ana has talked about this on her channel, that she was in fact sexually assaulted by 2 homeless people. But one of the things that people tend to overlook about this particular change in position is it's not necessarily the fact that she was victimized by criminals in this particular instance. It's the fact that she came forward to talk about it. She wanted to tell what happened to her just in the context of of her, but a lot of left-wing people behind the scenes ended up telling her to shut up. And very prominently, a bunch of left-wing people out in public also did the same because they were angry that Ana Kasparian's story of being victimized by homeless people would make people think that homeless people were dangerous and a problem that needed to be dealt with, and that would hurt the view of people or the perception that people had of an abstract homeless person that they might run into on the street. So Ana wasn't supposed to talk about being victimized by people who are dangerous because that would make people think that they are dangerous, and that could hurt the perception, the feelings, the social idea around homeless people, which of course they've renamed to unhoused because they're trying to make it not their responsibility, not about them, but about us as a society who must have failed them in some way.
Then all the crime-related stuff happened. First, someone broke into my car, stole my wallet. Who cares? Not that big of a deal, right? You just call your credit card companies, tell them it was stolen. They'll send you new credit cards. It's not the end of the world. That happened, and then after that, I was sexually assaulted, right? And I shared that story on the show, and the reaction I got from people on the left was insanely cruel and hateful. And so that was an eye-opener.
Now, this is something very different from what a lot of people perceive this situation to be, which is something bad happened to Ana, therefore Ana changed her position. Gosh, isn't that selfish that she only changed her position when something happened to her? Because it's not exactly about the incident that happened to her from my reading of the situation. It's about the fact that in that moment, Ana, who actually believed in what she was saying, found out that people are willing to acknowledge that their policies have all these negative consequences, but they would rather lie than actually deal with them. And that level of dishonesty was something that Ana Kasparian could not deal with. And believe me, this was kind of shocking for me as somebody in the audience who has talked about many times when I think Ana and Cenk were lying in the past, because I thought when she was saying things like the Kyle Rittenhouse chased Rosenbaum and the video had been out for a year, there's no way she could not know that that was false. But then Ana, more embarrassingly in her retraction, admitted that she had not seen the video. So I think even the times that I might have thought she was lying or Cenk was lying, and maybe there were times when they were, a lot of them were just that they didn't know. They were in the bubble. They bought into the ideology so much that they just never encountered that alternate information. But when you have something happen to you in your life and people are trying to essentially gaslight you and say that it's not happening, it kind of makes you think and rethink some of your political positions. But what I found interesting about this particular segment was the fact that Ana also talked about being victimized in two other ways related to her car, nowhere near as serious as the sexual assault. But until this point in time, she had never talked about it publicly. And considering this is only in the members only Ask Me Anything, it's still not kind of all that public. But essentially, people were breaking into her car.
After that, someone tried to break into my car by jamming a screwdriver into the driver's side lock. That destroyed the electrical system of the car. There was also a shortage of parts at the time, so my car was in the shop for 3 months straight. That was brutal. And then catalytic converter theft. I mean, it was just one thing after another, after another, after another. And it's like, man, I'm lucky that I have a job that pays me enough to, deal with these financial issues and it doesn't totally crush me. But what about everyone else who's like living in my state and dealing with this stuff as well? Not a lot of people are able to afford emergencies like this with no issue, right?
Now look, this really hit home for me because what she said about having her car not available to her because the electrical system got messed up because somebody tried to break into it with the screwdriver is almost word for word verbatim what I said after I had my car stolen. And that's the thing. I deal with this with all of you guys. The fact that you guys support this channel, the fact that you guys have allowed me to make a living makes this blow significantly easier. If you're somebody who's even like regular, ordinary middle class or working poor or whatever, and a situation like this happens to you, it's absolutely devastating. There's no possible way I can imagine you getting through this if you don't have the savings that I have, if you don't have the network of support that I have, if you don't make the income that I have, or at least a reasonably good income, because it's a significant shock. It's a significant disaster, which is I don't know how normal, average, everyday people who don't have the savings or don't make as much money can deal with these kind of problems because they're financially devastating. Now, I said it particularly hurt me in the moment that it happened because I had a big wedding payment. I have to pay my taxes, which of course I pay an entire year because I want to feel that much pain. And then I had to deal with the additional expenses of losing a vehicle to theft, which by the way was never recovered. So eventually buying a vehicle. So it's a lot for an average person to deal with. And when this happens to you and you actually have the means to deal with it, the support system to deal with it, and then you think about how other people definitely don't, it really starts to make you think that, hey, crime is probably the thing driving poverty, not the other way around, and this is a perfect example of this. Now again, Ana is still very left-wing in the way that she views this. In fact, she quotes that 40% of Americans can't survive a $400 emergency stat that I've debunked time and time again on this channel, and honestly, it frustrates me to hear that repeated over and over again. First of all, as I said in the quick debunking, which I'll link in the sources of this description so you guys can check it out for yourself, the $400 was a surprise bill, not an emergency, and people didn't say that they couldn't pay for it or they go bankrupt if they had this bill come up. The 40% was actually people who said that they would not pay for it through cash, through savings, through a checking account, or through a credit card that they paid off within the month. So if you had this $400 bill, you paid it off with the credit card, and then you took 2 months to pay it off, you're included in the 40%. And when you break down the actual Federal Reserve survey, what you find is that there's only 12% of people who reportedly say they can't deal with a $400 emergency. By the way, that's incredibly serious, but it's nowhere near 40% of the country. And just think about it. Let's say 2 of your tires went flat. You could easily spend $200 on a tire, twofold. You think people are on the verge of bankruptcy from 2 flat tires? It just doesn't make any sense. And I'm so tired of people repeating numbers that don't make any sense, that sound really outrageous, that sound like they're too crazy to be true without checking if they're true. But that's a little side rant. That has nothing to do with anything. That's just to my point that Ana actually, again, is very left wing, and she uses the same stats that I've complained about before on the left wing. But there's also another story about her father that also hit close to home for me that I want to share with you. Now, I'm not going to share much clips from this AMA beyond this because it is behind their paywall, and if you want to be a member like I am, you can go watch it in its full context. But this one I found to be incredibly interesting.
My dad came to America as a refugee. He wanted to escape Soviet-era Armenia. At the same time, my dad has never, for better or worse, has never been a believer in investing in the stock market. And so he needed to have a plan for retirement if he's not going to invest in the stock market, if he's not going to have an IRA or a 401k or a pension, which isn't even really a thing these days, then he needs to figure out what he's going to do about retirement, right? So he decided to save up, and buy a small apartment building, okay? At that year, 2022, there was a moratorium on evictions, and his tenants unfortunately decided to take full advantage of it, even though they were still working, even though they were buying new cars, and they just refused to pay rent. That was my dad's only income. That was the only household income for my mom and dad, okay? My mom's diagnosed with blood cancer. My dad can't make any money off of his one retirement investment.
So here you have Ana talking about her father in his 70s, doesn't really have a retirement income except for a triplex apartment that he put into. I actually heard her say on other podcasts and other stories that he didn't really believe in the stock market. He thought it was a way for the wealthy to screw over the poor, which by the way is wrong. It's incorrect, which she acknowledges. But ultimately, during the pandemic, when they had the eviction moratorium, people stopped paying their rent. They stopped paying him. And he still had to maintain the building and pay all the costs. And this is very similar to a lot of squatter stories that we cover. And also, at the same time, Ana had to come out of pocket in order to support her father through this troubling time.
It was a hard year financially, not just for my parents, but for me, because who do you think is stepping in to help? At the same time, my dad still has to pay the utilities. He's not going to stop paying utilities and maintaining the building for his tenants, right? So he kept doing that too. It was an awful year.
And by the way, 100% can relate to that. This is not a tenant-landlord situation, but I had a relative struggling financially. They discover mold in her kitchen. She ends up having the whole kitchen ripped out. When it came time for the insurance to cover this particular mold situation, they decided to blame her, say it was based on neglect. So then she was frozen out, and people in my family had to contribute so she could have a kitchen, so she could pay her mortgage through this troubling time as she fought it out through the insurance company. And like Ana Kasparian, even though this was something that was going on in the background of my life, this is not something that I shared publicly. But unlike Ana Kasparian, I didn't have a bunch of different people saying people like that relative that I loved, that I was willing to sacrifice in order to help, was actually evil and deserved to be stolen from.
And at the same time, all I'm hearing from my political side, from leftists, from progressives, is landlords are garbage, they're terrible people, fuck them, they can eat shit.
And in the case of Cenk's nephew, should be killed just for being a landlord.
Well, my understanding is that the property owners who have properties there choose just not to rent it at all.
Yeah, kill them. Kill those motherfuckers in a video game. Sorry. Holy shit. Murder those motherfuckers in the street. Let the streets soak in their red capitalist bloods, dude. Oh my God, in a video.
So I just feel like the treatment and the rhetoric that I was seeing and hearing and feeling really bothered me. And it felt like, you know, for all the attention I was spending on the right, basically seeing issues as black and white and being kind of needlessly cruel to people, I was starting to see similar behavior on the left, and I didn't like it.
Look, one of the reasons why I'm sympathetic to Ana, first and foremost, she's actually making content and throwing her opinion out on the internet and subjecting herself to the scrutiny that comes with it. So there's a baseline of respect for anybody who actually enters the arena, no matter where they are on the political spectrum, versus random anonymous commenters that will tweet at you or whatever. But number two, I watch her show, so I actually understand where she's coming from, unlike people who just go based on the shortest possible clip and say this week she's red-pilled, and then 6 weeks later when she says something else, they do the same exact story, not even acknowledging that there was a pass point in it or anything that she said in between, because why would you pay attention? These are the same people who every time Bill Maher says something about how he doesn't like political correctness, they also say he's red-pilled, even though Bill Maher in the 90s did a show against political correctness. Like, you guys really need to get over this idea that politics started the second you started paying attention to it. All these people have lives and track records and whatnot, and honestly, it's just not a good look when you're covering the news in the media like that. I'm just saying, for those of us who have a memory longer than 8 days, you're looking kind of stupid when you do that. But secondly, Ana has been victimized, and she has had members of her family victimized by policies that are being advocated, or not just advocated by her friends and by her colleagues, by her peers or whatnot, but advocated to extreme levels. I mean, again, if your father's retirement is tied up in an apartment complex and he's still maintaining the building, even though these people who did not lose their jobs are just stiffing him because the law allows him to do that, and you have people on your side of the political spectrum going on their show every day talking about how landlords are not just bad people for no reason, but they also should be subject to death and they deserve to be screwed over in this way, it's not really going to align with you. You're going to realize that these people, they're not decent, or more importantly, they're not plugged in and connected to the real world, because obviously situations are far more complicated than that. Now, does that mean that I agree with Ana on everything? Absolutely not. Does that mean that we're actual literal besties? No, it's a meme. Relax, everybody. But the fact is, I'm not looking for a best friend on the internet.com, and I'm not looking for 100% agreement. As long as you're trying to find the root facts in your arguments and supporting them logically, and you're not trying to demonize your political opponents rather than argue against them, that's the bare minimum that I look for. Because if we actually agree that we're going to have an honest conversation, if we actually agree that we're going to suss out the same root facts, then we can actually progress and go forward and share a country together in a broader sense. For example, I have a close friend on the internet.com called Nuance Bro. Me and him disagree a lot on Israel-Palestine. By the way, Ana Kasparian and I also will disagree on that particular issue. Now, a lot of people want me to demonize this guy or anything like that, but he's actually a good, decent man. On top of that, he's incredibly beautiful. I'm not saying anything, but look at this Persian Adonis right here and tell me you don't find this man to be unbelievably attractive. And by the way, he does a show with my friend Lisa, also a wonderful person in this space, Tim Pool's Booker, the person who cheats and gets me on the show in order to get into these good conversations like the Emma Vigeland one. It's called Nonsense and Nuance. I definitely recommend you guys go and subscribe. They're just starting up, but it's a fun show. Link to that in the description. Now look, the overall takeaway that I want you to get from this video, other than the fact that Nuance Bro is a beautiful Persian man, no hetero, is the fact that I'm not looking for 100% agreement, and you shouldn't look for 100% agreement. And you don't have to support Anna or anything like that. She's apologized and gave retractions for some things, but a lot of people say, well, she didn't retract this or that. That's on you to determine if you wanted to retract everything that she covered that you didn't like. That's not my bar. My bar is actually being able to have a conversation with somebody. My bar is actually being able to discuss issues, to see somebody that's actually thinking, sussing out, or looking for the alternative viewpoint. And considering on my channel, probably a year before Anna said anything publicly that even showed that she was moving supposedly to the right on crime, I pointed out that she was using phraseology from my videos. The fact of the matter is, it seems like she is trying to do that. She is trying to look into the other side, check out at least the arguments, whether she agrees with them or not. She wants to know them, and I can respect that. And honestly, it's not just rhetoric on Twitter. It's not just an isolated rant. If you look at the stories that she chooses for her Wednesday episode, which she does the first hour by herself, it's reflected in that as well.
After deliberating for less than 2 hours, the jury in a viral drunk driving case out of Tallahassee, Florida, has found a 56-year-old man by the name of Calvin Riley guilty of driving under the influence. Now, you must be wondering, why are you covering this story? Who cares? It's a driving under the influence case. It's not that big of a deal. It turns out that the story did go viral when the arrest was made last year in 2023. And it was because a portion of the body cam footage, which was highly edited, made it appear as though one of the officers on the scene had planted evidence on Mr. Riley. And so when you look at the raw, unedited footage of the body cam, the body cam video, you see something entirely different. And I think it's important to set the record straight.
I mean, recently on her show, she covered a story that the left was going absolutely crazy over, where they accused a white female cop of planting evidence on an innocent Angel Black person. And Anna showed the edited footage that people were using for propaganda purpose and the full context of the footage in order to completely debunk that narrative. So she's actually changing her coverage. She's changing what she's highlighting. She's calling out people on the left for their bad behavior because she seems to be looking for a more honest conversation, more honest political discourse. And for the people who are saying that she's just grifting for the money, I will point out that she's been at TYT for 17 years. She likely has had offers to leave TYT, and she refused to do so. One of the things that I'm basing that on is that I remember when Dave Rubin left TYT, he went to a company called Riot Media, which was a left-wing progressive startup, and they picked him as the head of that network, the face of that network, when he was like the 4th or 5th most prominent person at TYT. You're going to tell me that there's not other startups that try to get Ana Kasparian, the 2nd most prominent person at TYT, one of the faces of the network, to start up their thing? I mean, Dave Rubin ended up going from that to join Larry King in his online show, and these are all opportunities that Anna would have had throughout the course of her career that she did not accept because she genuinely believes in Cenk's mission. So she's not gaining more views or all that much more popularity from taking these positions. A lot of times the audience is attacking her and rejecting her for it. There's also her friends, people that she's known for years, that are attacking her, throwing shade at her publicly and telling her to shut up in private, according to her. And that doesn't seem like a successful grift to me. That seems like people don't want to make a counter argument against her, so they're just trying to smear her. And grift is like the number one, I don't have an argument against you, so I'm going to say you don't believe what you're saying kind of thing that people do.
Is that I think you guys can tell that I am willing to say things on the show knowing that it's going to lead to backlash. And it's taken me a very long time to accept something that Cenk says to me, which is that it takes a lot of strength. Like, it takes a strong person to be willing to do that. Not a lot of people are willing to go against the grain, but since I think it's important to challenge myself, I find myself also challenging the audience. Some people appreciate it, others don't. But I'm gonna do it no matter what because it's who I am. So I'm proud of that. At first, I felt like that was a negative thing because why can't I just go along to get along? Why not? Life is so easy that way. People who do that move further in their careers. They're beloved by everyone. Why don't I just do that? And so I do sometimes question why am I the way I am, and why can't I just be a little more, just go with the flow and just say what people want to hear. But I'm actually proud that I'm willing to face backlash. I'm proud that I'm willing to say things knowing that it's going to lead to backlash. So I would say, broadly speaking, that's what I'm most proud of.
Now look, if I'm wrong about this and Ana does a video where she's like, JK, LOL, this whole thing was a farce and I'm here to take all your conservative money and go back to TYT and something, whatever you're imagining in your brain that makes absolutely no sense, I will admit that I'm wrong on this channel, but of course, I'm never wrong. In fact, even when I say wrong things and then go on to correct them later, both the initial thing I said and the correction of me saying the exact opposite are in fact both correct because that's how right I am. But I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below, and I just want you to think about the things that I brought up to you guys, in the audience, when other people are covering this in a very lazy, lackluster way that clearly shows that they only watched the snippets of the viral clips that were available on social media. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me defending my literal best friend, Ana Kasparian. Till next time.